Namaste, and welcome back to Waking Up with Mindful Serenity Yoga. And we're going to continue with our exercise of answering a question from the jar and attempting to answer that question within a 10-minute time frame. Of course, these answers are far from perfect. I am no master, I am no teacher, I am no guru. I am simply a person learning the value of discovering who I truly am at the deepest level, so that I can be the best human I can be while I am here. If that makes any sense to anybody. So I am going to, without a further ado, just reach in and grab a question. Oh, he's going to try to reach down to the bottom. This is, my grandson's construction paper. So it must be a question that's related to my book that I'm writing. So I'm going to take a deep breath before I read it. Set my timer. Oops. And I will read the question. Wow, it's hard to read. Which way does it go? What do you mean yoga can take us beyond where psychology leaves off? What do you mean by yoga can take us beyond where psychology takes off? That's a very good question, and I love psychology. In fact, I've studied psychology for many years. I had the intention years ago of leaving nursing to become a psychologist, but I landed a job as a nursing educator in between that time, and I kind of derailed my mission of becoming a psychologist. But I've always had a strong fascination with the mind and psychology. Psychology, of course, is the study of the psyche, the mind as we know it, with our contemporary understanding of things, okay? So psychology is the study of the mind. Psych means mind. We have to be very careful with that word mind, because sometimes we have a very limited version of it, and we assume the entire mind is the personal mind, the part of us that we identify as belonging to this human incarnation, this me, right? So when we understand the mind in terms of psychology and psychiatry, we're talking about the psyche. Now, I use the word psyche, even though it means mind, technically, in English language, translated from Latin. When we use the term psyche, I see it more as the personal mind and the personality, okay? So this idea of me as this little separate being who's tramping around on this planet doing what that needs to be done in order for this human, this body, to survive, and this mind to survive psychosocially. That's in the environment, a sense of belonging in the environment that I'm in, a sense of trust and safety, a sense of security, a sense of like I said, belonging, a sense of esteem, how good this little me feels about itself. And eventually, if we're looking at Maslow's hierarchy, this little self-actualizing, becoming the best little me I can be. So psychology focuses on the personal mind, the personality, this self-concept I have of me. Yoga takes it a step deeper, so it leaves off from the me. So in psychology, what we're trying to do is preserve this me, make this me feel better. So when you go to a psychologist, you usually have a personal issue related to this little person and how it's adapting to the environments it is in, how it's adapting in relationships, how it's adapting with its idea of itself, and is there self-love there? And I want to make that self, when we talk about psychology, very distinct from the self we talk about in yoga. So the self we talk about in psychology is the little s, the little me, this idea of a separate little entity in a physical form. So the physicality of the individual is important to the psyche as well, to the sense of self with a little s, right? So the body seems to be more important than the mind, and a lot of times in this contemporary society, it seems to be the driving force, right? We do things to please the body, conserve the body, protect the body, and thus protect the psyche that's we think of as inside the body. So we are doing everything we can to protect this little self. So when I have a problem with the little self and my idea of this little self, maybe I have a problem at work, maybe I'm stressed out, maybe I'm burnt out from parenting my children, maybe I had a divorce or had something happen in my marriage and I'm needing help, I would go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and I should make that distinction too. Psychology, the word itself, ology means study, so it's the study of the mind. It's an individual, a psychologist is an individual who studies the mind and works with, a certain level of the mind. A psychiatrist, on the other hand, is actually a medical doctor, so their foundation is in medicine, right? It's in the medical approach, the medical model. And they go on to study the mind in reference to the brain and how the brain works and all that. Now, psychologists will study the brain too, because there is still that connection, that consciousness, and this idea of who we are, the mind, exists within the matter of the brain, many times in both these fields, right? We have this idea that it is the brain that's malfunctioning in psychiatry, so we do things that we can to help that brain work better with maybe it's neuroleptics or, pharmacology, or maybe it's ECTs, electrical convulsion therapies, anything to sap that mind and rewire it and bring it back into functioning. In psychology, we still look at many psychologists will still refer to the mind as this entity inside the brain, right? The brain is a part, there's that connection, that matter. Mind does not exist outside of matter. It doesn't exist outside the brain. So again, we're focusing on brain, but we can rewire it. We can change our neural pathways. We can change the way we're thinking so that we feel better. And, and it's a lot about emotion. That emotion is just energy in motion, basically, but it's the energy we believe is our feelings, or the way, if we're sad or happy, all those types of things. So psychology focuses on that realm, and so does psychiatry in a sense. But it's all about the personal mind, and I gotta make that clear. It's all about the personal mind, this idea we have of who we are, this idea of me. The psyche then can be distinct from the mind, the true mind, the whole mind, the intellectual mind, the universal mind. And yoga takes us out of that me focus and brings us back to the universal mind, to the whole mind, to unity. Yoga actually means unity, or yoke, which means unifying and bringing everything together. So in psychology and psychiatry, we're studying the self in terms of the little s, this idea I have of myself, my personality, my body, my roles that I'm playing, this idea of who I am. And when we move to yoga, the goal isn't to conserve this self, protect this self, reinforce this self, maintain this self as it is in psychology and psychiatry. It is to get beyond this self. So psychology and psychiatry leave off at the point of, okay, we're going to make the personal mind the best personal mind it can be. We're going to really cement this idea that I am this body, I am this personality, so I'm just going to build that up so it can adapt to the world. And that often includes manipulating the world around us so that if we feel better inside, right? So it's like, this is my version of reality. I'm going to make it the best version of reality it can be so this little me feels comfortable and safe and is growing and enhanced inside of it. Whereas when we step beyond that and we get into yoga, we are actually letting go of that little person, of this little idea I have of myself. So the self with the little s becomes a focus on the self with the big S, the universal self. It is consciousness focus, not related to matter, seeing the brain as only a filter for that consciousness to come through, so that I'm going to build my consciousness in a unified way. I'm going to build my connection with all that is. I am going to go deeper. Psychology and psychiatry is here, And with yoga, we come down further, away from this plane of existence that we know as reality, our physicality, and we leave the connection to matter and come down a little deeper into something deeper. We're still using mind, but we're using the whole mind, not focusing on this narrow little personal mind and consciousness as it relates to this me and the people around me, etc. How this me feels. We take it to consciousness in general. Instead of focusing on the me and what the me needs, we fall back down away from that and we fall back into consciousness. What the yogis would say is who we really are, the true self. Self-realization, Maharishi said, right? That's the goal, self-realization. Realization of who we truly are beyond the psyche and this idea we established through all our conditioning, all our learned events, all the things we experienced as a human on this planet throughout the years of our life. So we recognize that as just phenomenon that unfolded in front of us, and we're not attached to it, we're not clinging to it. We realize this is something that's human, who I am not. I'm just experiencing humanity has gone through. And I'm coming down here to look at what's going on up here as just superficial phenomena. And I am feeling and experiencing life at a deeper level as consciousness. So when we talk about psychology and psychiatry's version of healing, it's healing the little me and reinforcing this idea that that's who we are, that we are this personality, we are this personal mind, we are this body, and we are separate, little entities that need protection and salvation. And we really work on maintaining that, making the environment that me considers its home safe and sound for that personality, that idea, and it's just an idea and a self-concept, to grow and flourish. Whereas in yoga, we get beyond all that and we go deeper and we see true healing as falling back into who we truly are and realizing self with a capital S. Seeing this mind not just in that little personal version we had, but in its extended form, which encompasses all beings, all things, all life. And it's a very selfless type of understanding of things, because it is going back to who we truly are at a deeper level. Higher consciousness, many would call it, right? So yoga takes us beyond the little me focus that psychology and psychiatry stop at, and it takes us deeper to the real focus of who we are. Now, many fields of psychology and psychiatry are exploring this. They are coming, as science comes to terms with all that was learned by the ancient rishis years ago about quantum fields mechanics and about consciousness and the reality and the nature of things all be vibrating energy, at a level we are not able to see and sense with our five senses. As quantum mechanics and physics comes to terms with that, we also see psychology and psychiatry coming to terms with that. So many psychologists will go deeper. They're called transpersonal psychologists, right? Transpersonal psychiatry, going beyond the old standard traditions of psychiatry and psychology set up by, William James. William James was pretty much advanced for his age, but say Freudian psychoanalysis and stuff, going beyond that to understand at a deeper level who we truly are. And we see much more healing, like true healing, say, of trauma in yoga than you would ever see it in psychology and psychiatry, because we are going deeper and it is a lasting version. We see more people finding peace, like a true universal peace that's unconditional, not related to the things that are happening around us, but about all due to the inner reflection, that coming back to stillness and silence and solitude and determining through this laboratory of the mind what life is all about and who we are. So we see a deeper, more lasting healing taking place in yoga than you would ever in psychiatry or psychology. Both are wonderful fields, and I love both. But I just see that in my own study of psychology, that I reached a point where it couldn't go any further. And at that point of junction, I was lucky enough to discover, I had always been practicing yoga, but I just got a little deeper into my practice and started exploring the ancient wisdom traditions a little bit more. And I came to see the wisdom and the guidance that was there that went beyond psychology and psychiatry. That's my book. I hope that makes sense. I know, once again, I went over my time. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have an amazing day. Namaste.